look, you've faced some challenges with your family. Are you okay talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's part of the story. It's part of, I think, what's created some of the resilience.
I was thinking the first time we sat down, I think, was Olympic qualifying. So that would have been late 2011, early 2012, I forget which, at BC Place, just so in advance of the London Olympics. It's been quite a trek since then, hasn't it?
It's just been a hell of a ride. I think that's the only way I can describe it. You come to Canada, you're taking your first big job, because you're working with Christine Sinclair, so that's a big job. And you don't know how long you're going to be in Canada. Is it 3 months? Is it 6? Is it a year? And what is 11 years later and still here? Can't get rid of us.
Yeah, it's here in a really different context now, but a couple of Olympic medals, World Cup qualifying for the men, World Cups for the women. It's quite a resume over the last 11 years. So congrats for that, first of all. I don't think I've ever talked to you that much about kind of your growing up. Tell me about your hometown in the north of England.
Well, I grew up in a place called Consett, County Durham. It's not too far outside of Newcastle, not too far outside of Sunderland. Half the town are red and white, half the town are black and white. If you come from the northeast, that's all that matters, football. When you're growing up there, you just want to get out. Everyone wants to get out of Consett. It had a bit of a bad rep for being run down, and we had a steelworks there that pretty much employed the whole population. My granddad, my uncles, my dad, all the generations worked at Consett Steelworks. And when that closed down, there was a lot of poverty, and it got a bad reputation for being rough, a rough place. You know, you always want to try and get out of Consett, but going back recently, you realise just how beautiful it is. Growing up there, and I know how important your childhood scripting is on what you end up doing in life. I think it made us.
What dreams were you dreaming as a kid?
Oh, probably to be an astronaut, or I don't know, to be a soldier. I don't know. I think, at one point it was to be a footballer. I think that's at a certain point in growing up in the northeast, it just takes hold of you. It becomes your life. It consumes you. I think it was after the '86 World Cup. The hand of God moment. I remember being in the front room with my dad and the whole family there, and I think he nearly kicked the TV over when Maradona scored, but I think that was an awakening that this is what we want to do. This is what I want to do. I want to play for England.
When you were a kid, when you got to go to St. James Park, what was it? Do you remember the feeling of being in that stadium?
Yeah, I just got a little goosebump.
St James's Park, another hotbed of English football passion here. It's a cracklingly good atmosphere in what is a genuine football town.
My dad took us to the Newcastle game. It was Man U versus Newcastle. And it was amazing because I got to see the Man U players walk off the bus, and they were miserable. They wouldn't even smile or give you a look, and I was like, oh, if this is your first experience of it as a kid. And then as the game kicked off, I was able to lie on top of the dugout, on top of the Man United dugout. And this is where I'm at. I'm lying on the dugout as a kid. I must have been about 7, 8, I can't remember the age. But just being that close to it all, it was like phenomenal. So I had some great memories, but I didn't go that often. I actually went to a couple of Sunderland games as well. I remember as a 12-year-old getting physically assaulted off two grown-up guys in the in the stadium because I was bored. I wasn't a Sunderland fan. I was chucking crisps on the two guys in front, and this fella, he must have been 50-year-old. I was about 13, 12, and he came and he punched us right in the stomach. So I left the stadium early that day. Anyway, some great memories, and that's part of, I think, my DNA in football. Like, I haven't played at the highest level, but I just love the game, and I always want fans to appreciate the teams that you play for. I don't enjoy games that aren't open end to end and have that bit of drama,
Look, you've faced some challenges with your family. You okay talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's part of the story. It's part of, I think, what's created some of the resilience that I think you need as a coach.
Tell me how things went later, as a little bit later in your life as a teenager, and what was going on with your family.
You've got two parents that had two children before they were 20 years of age. So you've got teenagers, raising two young children. I've got a wonderful mom, great dad. They did the best for their kids, but they had their own issues. My father, he suffered from mental illness, and that became a real challenge because, back then, mental illness isn't like it is today, where there's an acceptance and an awareness that it's part of life. Back then, it was dirty. It was the family don't want to talk about it. They want to hide those things, and it was tough. It was tough because my mum and dad they split up, and for me, I was left to some degree looking after my dad. And as a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old coming through those years, you always had that image, your dad's going to be looking after you. So to be in and out of psych wards at the time, and they weren't good places back then. They weren't places that you want a young person going and seeing, to be fair. And then trying to deal with it, deal with understanding, why he's like that, and how do we fix him? How do you fix him? There were two things that happened for us, and when I've looked back on my life, the self-reliance, the indomitable will, and I think those two things were formed in those 4 years, where you recognize that no one really gives a shit. You're on your own here, and you've got choices to make. But as a young man, you went, I don't want anything from anyone. This is it. I'm on my own. So I think all of that has just put us in. I come back to moments none of the jobs I've been in have been easy. I've learned how to fight. I've learned how to push, to convince, to drive. And I think a lot of it came from those tough years.